Hey Dean, see your performance. Back down at the shop, and we have a new project in the shop that I wanted to go over real quick and kind of talk about what we're going to be doing with the car and everything. So we'll get right to it. Um, this is uh, a friend of ours from Sebring International track down there, Zach. It's a '91 Mustang. He bought it a couple weeks ago, and we tore into it already. I didn't record any of that. We got some pictures, and I'll put some pictures in there. But it's a nice car, you know. It's not in bad shape. It's a manual car, and at some point, somebody had decided they wanted to turbo it. So they redid the motor, 30 over, forged pistons. Looks like more or less a standard I-beam, rod. And then they bought the On 3 Performance Fox body kit, which you see over there laying on the ground. They did get a set of aluminum heads. We're not quite sure of the brand on them. There is like a serial number. It's right there. You can't really see it with this light either. It's like a 19489-3E. Not sure of the brand on them. But they got double springs in them. It looks like a fairly decent CC chamber. I don't know, stainless valves. But then they got some nice Scorpion 1.6 rockers with the polylock nuts on them. And then these are the On 3 headers that come in the kit, which kind of baffles me that the exhaust ports are just so small compared to the exhaust port on the cylinder head. I mean, they're just absolutely tiny. This is the exhaust, you know, manifold gasket, header gasket, whatever you want to call it. So if you look, I mean, they come in some spots. Some spots they're almost a good quarter of an inch inside the gasket, which lines up pretty good with the port on the head. The heads were like, you can see on the intake side, they're kind of like a ported and polished and then touched up, you know, by hand. They're not like a CNC port and polish, but they were touched up by hand. Had a Cobra intake on it with the Cobra injectors, the green top, I guess is what they call them on Fords. I'm not a Ford guy. T5 manual. And yeah, there's the Cobra intake there. So that's, I guess it's, you know, it's a good intake for Ford cars. And they went through and did like the stainless intercooler piping, which is quite heavy and I would think more costly to do a stainless intercooler. They did all stainless exhaust tubing, that's nice on that side. And it came all the way back to like right before the bumper, or not bumper, the rear axle, and then just kind of has a turn down on the back there. So I mean, I guess it's cool other than the fact they smash it flat to fit where there's piece of the frame that goes under the car. You got the car, it's got the weld, you know, the weld, I can't think of the name of that rim, the Unilight or something like that, Street Light, whatever it is. Some clapped out back tires, drag radials. It's got a nice front radial. Got a lot of meat left on it. So yesterday he brought the car up and it was losing coolant, a lot of coolant. So the oil was, you know, kind of milky. And he didn't really get like a straight story on, you know, what had been done. You know, this guy said this guy said that, whatever. So we started tearing into it, and we pulled the heads off. But we pulled the intake off, and you can see all the milk that's sitting in the valley, lifter valley there. And then we said, okay, let's go ahead and pull the heads off of it and see what's going on, and what that looks like. Maybe it's just a head gasket. And lo and behold, I pull the driver's side, and immediately I see the bright white, which is usually it's burning. It's not burning good. It's usually coolant is in that cylinder. And you notice it's kind of rough and everything. So I said, man, that's kind of weird, Spark plug's busted up. I said, okay, that's cool, So we come back over and I look in the cylinder, and sure enough, the piston's bright white, and a very, very large section of the piston is missing. Sure enough, it is 30 over. They are forged pistons. And then you can kind of see down here, and it comes all the way up and then straight all the way up. The piston is entirely cracked in half. So that's not good. And he never, really drove the car. He got it, ran weird, had that coolant leak, so he never really drove the car, and that was, under good advice, and didn't want to hydrolock the motor if it was a good motor. Turns out it's not a good motor. So, which is really unfortunate after all the promises that this guy made that, he builds these. You could buy this car or you can have it built by him. And I don't know anybody in their right mind that wants to buy a car that has, in the listing, you put things like Mega Squirt 3, certain other things, and I don't know the listing. I didn't see the listing or anything like that, but you list things that the car is supposed to have, and you sell it to somebody that maybe doesn't know as much as everybody, or knows basics, so doesn't know what a Mega Squirt is, and has never gotten into that stuff, but by far Zach's not he's not dumb, he's not stupid, and he's a good guy, he's an honest kid, so to kind of take somebody's money on promises of what something is when it's really not, to me it's horrible. It's not a good thing to do. But then on top of it, to say, hey, we could build this car for you. We just need half the money up front. And in this situation, it makes me think, what happens? So he buys the car, gives the guy the money for the car, and he says, yeah, I want you to build it. I want you to fix all the little things that are wrong with it, and make the car a good runner. Nothing. He's not looking for 1,000 horsepower. He's looking for 450, 500 horse to the tire, fun, streetable car, but that he can go to the track and have fun with at the same time. So you give this guy this money, and say it's $5,000 build, you give another $2,500 up front. And what does this guy do when he comes across this? Is this the phone call you get when he says, oh yeah, by the way, the car you bought from me, the engine in it needs to be completely rebuilt. The cylinder wall on the bottom here is absolutely gouged everywhere. So this block, being that it's already 30 over block, maybe could go another 30 over and clean that up. But now, again, I'm not a Ford guy. I don't know these 302s and all that. So how far down is the cylinder wall that it's safe? How far can you take that? Can you go 60 over with these and be safe on a boosted motor? I'm sure this guy would have told him absolutely. He does it all the time. But I know in boosted motors, supercharged, turbocharged, even nitrous, under our experience, you can't go as far as if you were running a naturally aspirated, because it makes the cylinder wall so thin that it cracks the cylinder walls. Um, I've never had the experience, but that's always been our our experience with our engine builder and his recommendations. So now you got a set of aluminum cylinder heads. I'm sure this guy would have said this head is junk, and we need to buy another head. Reality of it, these little pits and stuff aren't too bad. They could be polished up, and the head would be fine. There's no chunk of aluminum stuck in there. I haven't pushed the valve to see if the valve faces are fine. But it didn't hang the valve open. It's not bent or nothing like that. So, hopefully that side of it is good. I don't know. These situations are painful on the ethical, the moral part of things. I don't know. It kills me to see things and to hear things like this. And I see them. It's almost a trend. Like it's cool to rip people off, and it's really not. I don't know how people sleep at night. I don't know how people go about their day. It's not something I would do. It's not something I have ever done. Would never do. Would never want to do. Wouldn't want done to me. Have had it done to me, and it's not a good feeling. So we're gonna make it right with Zach. He's a good friend of ours, and this is what we do. So what we'll be doing with the car now, being that the Ford parts to replace this engine would be expensive. We can get a block, okay. Crank's good, okay. Rods are good, okay, great. But the other half of the issue is, whoever built the motor, I don't think had a clue as what they were doing, because we pulled the pan off the motor and we find this, a nice large chunk that's perfectly triangulated. Well, not perfectly triangulated, but it's like a triangle. And you can see it's kind of rounded. That is a piston skirt. And you would assume it'd come off of that piston that broke. But it didn't. So assuming this is number 2, even side, this is number 1. Number 1, we lift the motor and we're spinning it over, and we see the skirt is missing off of number 1. So what happened there? That the skirt broke off and rattled around in the bottom of this motor for who knows how long. I mean, it looks like it just kind of pinged around a little and dropped to the pan. So maybe that's a good thing. But on the other side of it, did it beat up the rod a little? We don't know. We didn't finish pulling it apart because at this point, the motor's trashed. That's my experience, my opinion, and my recommendation that this motor's absolutely trashed. And being that a motor that's rebuilt, 30 over and all this good stuff, and has no miles on it, you would assume that there would be hone marks in these cylinders. But you can look and see that there is not. There is actually a ridge at the top of this cylinder where the rings wear the cylinder bore up to the point of where that top ring stops, which is, we'll call it a 1/4 of an inch, 3/16, 1/4 of an inch down from the top of the deck. The ring stops, and there's a ridge there, and there's absolutely no hone marks anywhere in this. So it kind of makes you wonder. And the pistons aren't filthy, so it's kind of a sign that these 2 cylinders weren't good, or these 3 cylinders had a little bit of water in them. This one's got a lot of carbon deposit on it. This side, none of them have carbon deposit on it. So what happened with this motor? I don't understand you know, it just baffles me. Sorry about the flashing. It's a light I'm trying. But it just baffles me that people do these things. You tell somebody it's a rebuilt motor and got next to no miles on it, or whatever the story is, and this is what you get. And these are what people have done. You know, this is what people do. They probably won't stop doing it. But, you know, we feel bad for Zach, and like I said, we like Zach. He's a friend of ours. So we're going to make it right, and we're going to make the car faster. Just because that's what we do. So we're actually, being that I'm sort of a hoarder, collector, I have a few, not LS, I mean, you call it LS, they're Vortex, the iron block. I have this one here. It's a 5.3 block. It's a good block. Needs to be cleaned up, gone through a little bit. And just, you know, mostly it just needs to be cleaned up. The bores are a little rusty. I got some surface rust on them, but that all can be cleaned up. I've got plenty of parts. Got a bunch of intakes, you know, stock plastic intakes. I always keep them because you never know. I got exhaust manifolds. I got water pumps, crank pulleys, flex plates, plenty of pistons and rods. I have a good crank hiding over there. Plenty of cylinder heads, valves, blah blah. I've got a bunch of gaskets. I got head gaskets. No, just need the small timing cover gasket, rear main seal gasket, stuff like that. I have plenty of the covers, plenty of valve covers. I mean the front and rear covers and valve covers. I have plenty of those. Bunch of oil pans. I don't know how I get so many oil pans, but I get a lot of oil pans. So that's what we're going to be doing is going through everything. Excuse me. Choking. We're going to be going through everything we have. We're going to dig out every part, piece that we have laying around that we're not using. And I know that shelf looks like an absolute mess, but it's quite organized for a dummy like me. And there's another shelf over there that's got some parts. Another shelf there that's got a bunch of parts. Like I said, it's organized for me, where I know the things are. Sort of a chaotic organizing system, but it works for me. So we're going to be going through the car. It is going to get an LS, and it is going to get an automatic. It's just easier to do the automatic now because eventually he does want to turn the car up, and a T5 is not going to last him very long. So that's what we'll be doing. It's kind of a quick update video. I know the S10, I haven't put one out yet, but our plan is in the next week here, get it on the trailer, get it up to the scales, get it up to the dyno, and then hopefully we'll get it running on the track, Orlando Speed World or Bradenton or wherever we go. That is our plan. That is our goal over the next 2 weeks with that truck, and see what we can turn it up, see what it'll make, see how it does. Hopefully it does good. Fingers crossed we don't end up with a cracked piston. But yeah, so big shout out to Zach and you know, for sticking in there and not just dumping the project when things kind of go sideways and it's unexpected. But that's what happens with race cars and, you know, building stuff. So thanks for watching. Click the like, click the subscribe, yeah, and the bell will notify you of new videos that we put out. But for now, that's it. That's all I got. Comment, like, subscribe, please. Thank you. Have a good day.